Live once again. We're making a habit of this, Rayo. It's
Well, 7 o'clock every night.
7 o'clock every night. We just happen to sit in our chairs, and the video just happens to come on. The audio, thank God, is there. And welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show, where we still have potential tropical cyclone now, a 9, which has still not become the ice storm, which is
Oh,
pronounced Isaias. It is
Isaiah.
Isaiah. No, not Isaiah. Isaias.
I'm just going to call it Tropical Storm
No,
9.
you're not. You're going to call it Isaias. We're going to shame the media who will butcher this name left and right. It's Portuguese for Isaiah. And again, and I looked it up, and it's Isaias. Now, I did notice a few things going on this evening on the satellite that look kind of interesting, and the Hurricane Center did mention in its last discussion of seeing a few things going on with regards to convection bursting. And I'll bring up the wide shot first. We'll give it a good freshening on the loop, but every time I do that, it's a disaster. So let's see if it winds up freezing the frames again. Hopefully it won't, but it did not. So here we go, Joe. I'm going to bring it front and center right off the bat. It seems like it's starting to at least try. There's a burst of convection that's going on near Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and points northward. And one of the things that I was thinking about today, because of the fact that when you look at it, it's really stretched out. The whole pressure field is stretched out. It's this inverted trough that you might wind up getting a low center. There's definitely a low center south of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, very broad. But I think where you see this convection that's bursting on the northern end, you might see the low center try to reform a little bit further to the north, and that's something to watch because the afternoon model cycle was further north and further out into the open waters of the Atlantic once you get north of the Dominican Republic and Cuba and toward the Bahamas. And that may hold a big key in terms of what this does down the road and what it winds up developing into. Because the further out it is, the better the upper air conditions are going to be a little bit better for it to organize a bit as it moves toward the Bahamas when we get toward Friday and Saturday.
Well, the one thing I've noticed is that the Hurricane Center has, on the last few runs, tracked this system right literally up the spine of the Florida Peninsula. And meanwhile, many of the models have been saying, no, it's not going to go that way. It's going to stay offshore of Florida, especially so with the parallel GFS, which takes the storm right up along and parallel to the Atlantic seaboard. And Joe brings it precariously close to South Jersey and the tri state metropolitan area by Monday night. And that's also indicative of something different because the GFS, the parallel GFS, is much faster. I mean,
Yes.
Monday morning, the Hurricane Center has this storm located somewhere over northern Florida. And meanwhile, the parallel GFS has this passing by our area by just a half a day later. And the other models, such as the global Canadian and the European, are slower by about 12 hours relative to the parallel GFS, but they too have the storm basically on the same kind of track and move it up in our direction for Tuesday, early Tuesday of next week. So a lot of uncertainty, and I guess again going back to the original comment by you, it's all going to be dependent upon how far off this system stays, and whether or not also it becomes fully enveloped or involved with the mountains of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. That too is going to be a big question because that would certainly, if it starts organizing and then it goes over those regions, it's going to tear the storm back up, and then it's going to have to put itself back together again as it moves north and westward toward the Bahamas and Florida.
The argument for a faster motion is predicated on the fact that an object that ends in motion tends to stay in motion until it doesn't. And this one's still flying at about 24, 25 miles an hour, which is a pretty fast clip, but it's also indicative of the fact that the kind of system it is. I think if you had developed a low-level center of substance out of this, you'd probably be seeing this move a bit slower. And that's maybe what will happen once it gets further north, assuming it does clear to the islands eventually, even if it does have some interaction at some point. Assuming it clears the islands, that as it begins to organize, it's likely to slow down. And also with the weakening of the upper ridge and the way the upper air is, that there's sort of a no man's land off the southeast coast of the United States, at least for a while. That should slow it down. But first and foremost is this thing has to close off. And we have to wait to see what the next recon finds. I don't know when the next plane is happening, because I checked on Tropical Tidbits and there doesn't seem to be one on the way at the moment.
Yeah, just looking here, it seems like there are two different camps regarding the speed and intensity and track. I mean, the European, the Canadian, and now I also took a look at the Icon, the German model, and they all basically have the storm come midday on Monday over the Carolinas, whereas both the GFS and the parallel GFS have that much further to the north and east and much further offshore. So
Right.
it's all going to be
Well, look, I think the takeaway in the long range, you're always going to see that widespread. But I think the takeaway is that you are going to see this thing try and move northwest, then north northwest, and then north, and then eventually north northeast in some fashion. Again, how far west does it wind up before it makes any kind of turn? Because that's going to impact its position along the east coast further north. I think the fact that the models all are doing that lends at least a certain degree of confidence that this thing is going to swing up and around. If we saw some of the models take it into the Gulf of Mexico, if some of them were just kind of leaving it behind, if they were all doing different things, our confidence factor would be, goose egg. But at least to me, at least the fact that we're seeing the models all trying to do something relatively similar lends a certain degree of confidence that something's going to happen down the road.
indeed, and just stay tuned. That's all we can say. But it looks like things will get interesting around here, perhaps at the beginning of next week, say Monday or Tuesday, and at the very least, I could see some soaking rain, perhaps a showery rain. And after all of this heat, we could use a soaking rain, not excessive amounts of rain, but maybe enough rain to make things a little bit better for gardeners and for all of our lawns out there, which for the fourth consecutive day look like they're burning up.
Now, WPC, on their updated forecast, which I just pulled up here, this is the next 7 days. So obviously, they're not going to see very much going on until then. It'll be a little bit different in the mid-Atlantic states, where that frontal boundary that's going to set up Thursday night and Friday is probably going to bring some rain showers. And we might even see some of that rain clip parts of New Jersey and Long Island Thursday night into Friday morning. We'll see. But they do have a very, very bullish view here with regards to the rainfall. And if we take a look, I'm just going to give an educated guess. I got to find, where's that yellow? There we go. Something a little yellowish, so it shows up. Well, that might work. But if you judge by the path of the heavy rainfall with the way WPC has it, I'm thinking that this is the kind of track that they're looking at from just looking at how they've laid out the rains. And they do have, Joe, substantial rains of 2 to 4 inches up to Long Island and north central New Jersey, southeastern PA, southern New Jersey, particularly down southern New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland into Virginia. They've got some patchy 4 and 5 inch rain amounts showing up there, and that heavy rain down the coast of the Carolinas, over much of central and south Florida, in fact. And of course, Florida is kind of in a dicey position here, depending on how this plays. you could wind up with the system along or just off the East Coast, or if it's weaker, it goes a little bit further to the west. I think either way, they're going to get a fair amount of rain out of this.
Oh, of course. No, there's no question they're going to get a fair amount of rain, especially when you're talking about a tropical system. And as we noted yesterday, if there's any kind of convection that's going to get involved with this, that'll only double or even triple the projected broad brush QPF totals. You could see even without any kind of direct hit, you could see some places down in Florida. I'll bet seeing on the order of 6 or 8 inches of rain. So for them, it's. But then again, Joe, I have friends who live down in Florida, and I mentioned this to a friend of mine earlier today, and he says, what else is new?
Yeah,
it's summer.
It's summer. All right, so here are the hurricane hurricane tracking model tracks. And I just want to make sure I got the latest one, because as you go through the afternoon, when you pull them up too early, they start adding additional model runs, and you can see the spread now. Overnight, Joe, these tracking models all went left. They were all in western Florida and up into the Gulf of Mexico, and now they've shifted back to the east. With a few tracks still going into the Gulf, but now we're seeing 3 or 4 of them going up through the Bahamas. Almost all of them actually cross this over the Dominican Republic. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see if that's correct. Then we'll have to wait till it emerges on the other side when it gets into the Bahamas for something to happen in terms of strengthening. But you do have a few of them making the turn up through the Carolinas, some inland of the Carolinas, one just along the Outer Banks, and then moving 1, 2, 3, 4 of them bring it to within 100 or so miles of New Jersey and Long Island early next week. So I think I guess the way I'm feeling about this in terms of what I'm seeing on the models and what's actually happening in the atmosphere, that I think we're going to wind up with something out of this. I'm just not exactly sure what it's going to be. Because if we wind up with a weak system, we're going to get all that moisture is probably going to funnel up the eastern seaboard anyway, so at least we'll get the rain. It's a matter of whether we have something offshore to deal with. And on that note, Joe, the ensembles again today, the GFS has been pretty consistent. The 12Z ensemble package, we don't have the 18Z yet, of course, but the 12Z ensemble package looks almost like the one it did yesterday. The mean track just off the south and North Carolina coast, moving what we call the box, moving through the box to 40 and 70. Or just north of 40 and 70, and we've got some members a little bit to the east of that, and some members a little bit to the west of it, and a couple of members actually running it just inland of the coast as it moves northward.
Yeah, that's gonna be. It'll be something to take people's minds off of all the stuff that's been going on in the news of late. But again, I don't know how
something
many
going
people.
on? Is something going on?
I'll still bet you, because again, watching some of the evening newscast tonight, it took until about 45 or 50 minutes into the newscast for even the first mention of this system. And you got to wonder, let's say by Sunday or Monday, how many people say like, nobody told us about this. When did this come up?
Well, we don't pay attention to those folks.
Yeah, well,
we don't. They're obviously not watching this show, so we really, we don't pay them any mind. We give that no value.
Right.
All right. So here's the interactive, Joe's favorite interactive forecast track map from the Hurricane Center with the latest track. And actually, it's not quite the latest one. It's the next to latest one. I didn't update it yet, so we'll give it a freshening here and see what it comes up with. And let's put the track on there. And they brought it up right through the middle part of Florida from south to north. They kind of adjusted it a little bit to the right. They do acknowledge. You see the spread, of course, with respect to the cone, quote unquote, running up off the Florida East Coast as well as off the West Coast. And again, that's all going to hinge on what exactly. The stronger the system gets, the further to the right it's likely to track. That's usually how it works. And when I say right, I mean further east.
I mean, we see that this track that you have on the screen right now takes it right over the Dominican Republic, right over Haiti. And my feelings are this: once it gets past Haiti and the Dominican Republic and gets its feet wet again, that is going to and starts moving through the islands of the Bahamas. But the Bahamas are relatively small and nothing compared to what storms, interaction with Haiti and the Dominican Republic with those tall mountains that they have. But once I think it gets past Haiti and the Dominican Republic, that's when I think you're going to start seeing the storm really put itself together. And that's also when I think we're going to really be able to hone in with greater accuracy
Uh,
to
uh,
where the storm is going to be going. And maybe not necessarily the strength, because we always trying to forecast the strength of these things is always problematic. But I think we'll get a very, very good idea, much better idea as to the path of this thing once it gets past the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and that's likely to happen in the next 24 to 36 hours.
yeah, we'll know tomorrow. I mean, we'll have a fair idea tomorrow of what's going to be going on. And on the here's the map, the Hurricane Center standard forecast map. You can see where the tropical storm warnings that are up for a few of the northern leeward. Some of them, Antigua, I believe, took theirs down now. You'll probably see the easternmost islands start to ease on some of the warnings, but we have them up for the British Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and the north coast of Haiti. Also, Turks and Caicos and the southeastern Bahamas are under a tropical storm warning, and we have tropical storm watches up now for the central Bahamas. And during the day tomorrow, we're likely to see additional watches being put up further to the north through the Bahamas. And eventually, we get to, I don't know, maybe by the time we get to Friday, they might be throwing a few up for parts of Florida once they have that part of the equation figured out. But we're still, we're still kind of on hold here until this thing decides that it's going to develop and become Isaias, which
And
is
I mentioned Bell yesterday because that was the first thing that came into my mind, thinking back to hurricanes that have affected this area. Another one, and at least initially, the track may be very, very similar, was David back in 1979.
but
It went right over.
David was almost a Category 5 when it was in the Northeast Caribbean, though.
Right, but I mean, we're talking about where this storm is right now, and where David was. David passed south of Puerto Rico. It did go over Haiti and the Dominican Republic. It emerged back out over the ocean, or back out over the Caribbean, and then it moved through the Bahamas. It went right up along the east coast of Florida, but it didn't go right along the eastern seaboard all the way up through and past us. This storm, David, went right along the eastern seaboard of Florida, then continued to move north, went cut right through the middle of the Carolinas, and went to our west. And I remember that storm bringing squally rains, gusty winds. We went under a tornado watch for a while.
We had
Early on
gusts
in
of
the morning.
70 miles an hour with that.
Right.
And the key was the fact that the David, even though it was inland, it ran east of the Appalachians. When they run east of the Appalachians, that's when you can get some action because part of the circulation is over the Atlantic, and it's also getting fed a little bit of what we call baroclinic energy, the non-tropical way storms intensify when you get a shortwave trough that gets involved. So it becomes a little bit of a hybrid as it moves northward. That basically was about 6 hours, as I remember, David. That only lasted
Right.
about 6 or 7 hours. It comes in because it's running up like a rocket ship, and of course the momentum is also going to be part of the equation when it comes to wind. But we got to see what we're dealing with first, and then we can figure that part out. The upper air, really, there's not much that's changed since yesterday in terms of the forecast logic that we've been using here, and this is what we had just a couple of days ago. I'm going to see if I can let's change the color again. I'm going to go back to red because that really does seem to work the best. So here is it, it's supposed to be red. Let's try it now. Yep, there it goes. All right, so I can clean up the board here. So there's your very narrow east-west ridge. And right in here, where that little hump is, that's where you've got the inverted trough that represents the developing tropical system. Here's your northern shortwave and I've gone back, by the way, this is back on Tuesday, back yesterday. So I'm starting back one day. And then, of course, you see at the other side of that upper high that continues out into the Pacific. There's a little bit of a weakness right in there through Texas and Louisiana. Now, moving forward in terms of time, we'll go through Wednesday, which is today, of course. And you see our trough swinging into the east brought some very odd dew point relief today. I don't know if you noticed this, Joe, but the dew points dropped into the 50s, except along the coastal counties of New Jersey and parts of Long Island had dew points this afternoon that were sitting over 70, and there were other parts of Long Island as you went further north and northeast where the dew points were down closer to 60. It's odd, but that's where the line set up. And it was you could literally go across the state of New Jersey and go from a dew point of 71 to a dew point of 59. Just take 195 and go from one side to the other. If you wanted low humidity, all you had to drive was a handful of miles to the west. But we are going to probably see those dew points maybe come down a little bit more come Friday into Saturday because of the troughing that's in the east. And I'll take off the drawing here so you can see what happens. That ridge in the Atlantic weakens off the southeast coast. That little circle there that you see right here over the Bahamas, that's your tropical system on this run of the GFS, which was further to the east. And of course, now you've got that shortwave trough coming down. And remember, there's another arm in the northern part of the jet that is swinging down. And it's going to try and phase with that southern part. And how those two interact? Is it a full phase like it gets to, or it seems to get to here at this point on Sunday? So now here's your tropical system, and you've got a south-southwest flow up the east coast. So it's got to ride up that trough goes all the way down, Joe, into the northern Gulf of Mexico. There's no way it misses that.
You know, Joe, to me today here in the Hudson Valley, I was out a few times today. It just felt to me like the sunshine was a bit more intense. Yeah, maybe I could feel a little bit of a drop in the humidity, a little bit of a dip in the dew point, but it was still very hot. Now today
You didn't get the dew point drop like the areas did further south. That the dew points were still hanging up by you into the 60s, but it was just really strange how it all how when I was looking at the observations on how it all set up, it just looked so odd.
Now today was the fourth consecutive day that Central Park got to or above 90, their second heat wave of the season. My question to you is, what do you think about tomorrow? Do you think New York hits 90 again tomorrow, or do you think they fall just short?
My heart wants it to fall short. Okay. Uh, it probably. I don't think it goes much above 90. If it gets to 90, and if there's sun most of the day, there might be some clouds that come in late in the afternoon because there could be some thunderstorms, I think, that might pop up late in the day, so scattered around. So maybe that cuts it down by a degree or two. I'll say it probably just barely gets to 90. It ekes it out.
I think it's going to do that. And in fact, I know what you're talking about in terms of clouds late and possibly even a shower late. I think for whatever reason, I think those clouds are going to hold off enough so that we may see temperatures in Central Park tomorrow. So he said. We'll see tomorrow night whether I was right or not. I think Central Park could go to like 93, 94 tomorrow. It's just my.
The way it is, what's going to stop it? I suppose. I honestly have been so focused on this, I haven't really given the short range a good look today.
Because that's what people want to know.
No, I know, but first we got to take care of this tropical system because we have listeners here and viewers from the Carolinas, down in Georgia and Florida, up the Mid-Atlantic coast. So we have to show them a little bit of weather love here, Joe.
I'm not going to mention who I'm referring to, but my wife and I, we were watching.
What's his name?
One of the local newscasts while eating our dinner, and when the weathercaster came on, the weathercaster said everything and everything except at the very end, mentioning that there could be a tropical connection about Tuesday of next week, but didn't show any maps of this tropical system. Didn't make any allusions to what this could mean down the road for us. Didn't make any revelations as to what it might mean for Florida, because as you well are aware, Miami is the sixth borough.
No.
And a lot of family and friends and loved ones live down there, even during the summertime. And I turned to Renata and I said, I can't believe that this whole weathercast just went right by without even mentioning or making an allusion until the very end that there's a tropical system that could be of concern to Florida and even up here.
Right.
Early,
And if
I
it's
will
up
not mention
here, it's
it.
all about this deep trough that is going to be taking shape. And all the models have this. That's I always look for you look for some sense of continuity. All the models have this in some form or another. Some have the trough even stronger than what the GFS has. The parallel GFS, the European, I was actually quite shocked at the European's run today because the European, and I'll bring that up, actually was further to the east off the southeast coast and yet further to the west as it moves up the coast. But the Europeans got a nice looking upper low here that cuts off in the western lakes. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen like that, but if it does, anything that's down here is just going to shoot right up. So
Right.
all the models have the setup in the upper atmosphere that you look for a storm that's going to try and come up the eastern seaboard. Now it's a question of how it executes with respect to the system itself and what happens with that. Because at the end of the day, it's really going to be all about that. It's really going to be all about that. And I want to. I pulled up. I got a couple of things I want to look at with respect to this. Now I pulled up the 18Z. Let's see if the 21Z surface map is out yet, and it is. And I have it centered so that we can look at some of the observations that are down in Puerto Rico, particularly because there's a couple of buoys here. What I'm trying to find is a northwest wind or a west wind. I mean, I see two northwest winds out in the open waters at the buoy, but the speed is nothing to write home about. And that still lends the argument, at least from the minimal observations that we could look at here. It's hard to determine whether we have anything other than a broad low pressure area. And the other map is, of course, from the Weather Service weather and hazards data viewer. So I've overlaid the radar on Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. You can see where the rain is, and also in the red, we're seeing some wind gusts that really here too, nothing to go crazy over, except at Culebra where it's 22 gusting to 32. And that's at King Airport in St. Thomas. It's 26 from the east southeast, gusting to 35. 82 temperature, 75 dew point under an overcast sky, and the radar showing some rain and looks like some heavy rains in the eastern part of Puerto Rico from at this time, and then that band that goes down into the open waters of the Caribbean Sea. But it's it's a little tricky here. Most of the rain that's showing up on the radar is actually north of Puerto Rico. This is where I go back to what I said earlier: is watch to see, and if it's going to happen, if some kind of low is going to develop where all this convection is north of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, you're gonna look for these winds over the islands to turn northeast and then turn northerly and
Right.
eventually even northwest. And that'll be the sign that some kind of low is trying to form north of the islands rather than the broad low that's still down to the south. So
Right.
those are the clues that you look for. Right now, we're not seeing anything that is indicating that. Although I'm noticing it, the winds on the western part of Puerto Rico are there's even a couple of spots that have northerly winds. And you've got northerly winds on the east coast of the Dominican Republic, which I think is kind of interesting. So we'll see. We'll see what the Hurricane Center does. 8 o'clock, there'll be the next advisory. If we make it that long tonight, we'll give it a look see.
And of course, Joe, if it does go, if the reformation, as you are suggesting, takes place north of Puerto Rico, as opposed to the current idea of it passing to our south, passing to Puerto Rico south, then that means that there's a chance that the system might actually either just skim north along the coast of the Dominican Republic, or maybe miss it entirely, and that would be a big plus for the storm in terms of maintaining its strength and also possibly taking a track, as some of the models have been suggesting, more to the east, as opposed to going right up the spine of Florida or along the west coast of Florida. That relocation of the center of the storm would put it either along the east coast of Florida or maybe just off of the Florida coast. and would give it a better chance of coming up along the entire East Coast and a better chance of it coming our way, maybe
All right.
for early next week.
Well, here's the Europeans' view, and again matches up fairly well with today's the late GFS to a degree. It just kind of straddles the Florida East Coast, passes south of Charleston, and then it moves northward. By the time we get to Tuesday morning, Joe, it's sitting somewhere over the Delmarva Peninsula. I should mention, by the way, that for those of you who are down in Delaware, Brandon Doherty, who's a regular here, he's got a weather page on Patreon for you Delaware folks called Weather Junkies Are Us. So you might want to give that a look. It's also for non-Delaware folks. If you're a weather junkie, you might want to give it a look, and that's on Patreon. Weather Junkies Are Us. So there's your low over the Delmarva Peninsula on the European Tuesday, and of course, right after that, you got a nice high up there, Joe, in James Bay that's kind of cradled around it. Gives you that wintertime feel. And here we go. By Wednesday, it's in the Gulf of Maine, weakens considerably. The interesting thing about the European suggests has this mostly as a as tropical storm strength, and the GFS. Now that on today's run, for the first time, a little bit more offshore, it does actually strengthen it on this run. It has it as a strong tropical storm, maybe even a minimal hurricane when it approaches the Carolinas, and then it kind of heads from there to Cape Cod and Nantucket. Whether that makes that turn or not, again, it's all going to depend on the orientation of the upper air, and there's still a lot of possibilities on how that ultimately shapes out.
And have you looked at the difference between the GFS and the parallel GFS? Now, the regular GFS, the one that's
which I just showed.
currently,
I'm going to bring the parallel up now, as opposed to the
I just want to, and I'm looking at my view right now on my own computer. I'm looking at the Atlantic, the tropical Atlantic, and if you look at the way the regular GFS depicts the storm after it passes our vicinity, it takes it up to this is now the 18Z GFS. It takes it past Nova Scotia. It then swings it out south of Newfoundland, and then it almost curves it back down to the southeast, and it still maintains a presence until about the 8th of August. So it kind of swings up through our area, goes northeast past Nova Scotia, south of Newfoundland, and then it rapidly sweeps on down to the southeast.
Well, I got it here, so I'm bringing it up now.
I want
I had the parallel up, so here's what you're describing. So go ahead, go ahead. There it is, southeast of Cape Cod, south of Nova Scotia, turns east, then southeast, and yeah, it's still sitting there on August 6th, although it weakens. And yeah, it just kind of sits there in the central Atlantic, eventually gets absorbed by a low southeast of Greenland.
right now that's the solution as provided by the GFS. The 12Z, of course, the 18Z parallel hasn't fully come out yet, but if you look at the way the 12Z parallel GFS handled it, it goes up past us, it goes right over Nova Scotia.
Right, I'm bringing. I have that up now.
Right. It
Go
just
ahead.
goes right over Nova Scotia. It then continues. It actually passes very closer to Newfoundland, but instead of making that curve southeast, it then moves and meanders almost straight east across the northern Atlantic and continues. It's still together.
Yeah, it's right here. This 93 low, the 93 low that you see, that represents whatever's left of this. And yeah, then it turns northward and passes and heads up toward the Arctic.
Right.
Yeah, and it's amazing how some of these can do that when the ones that get really far to the north, and every once in a while we've seen them over the last couple of years where they go to Ireland and England and Scotland. That's a long range issue that we'll deal with when gets out in the Atlantic. Let's see what happens as it comes up, as it tries to come up the East Coast, assuming that it does. Again, this is the parallel GFS, which has because of the fact that it straddles the eastern part of the Bahamas. And then goes northward toward North Carolina. It's over open waters, and it does tend to pick up a fair amount of strength, at least the way this model depicts it. Uh, and this would be probably a minimal hurricane that's passing relatively close to us, that's going offshore, racing on up to the northeast. Look, folks, we could do this all day long and look at every single model on Earth, and we're still not going to have an answer to where this is, how this is playing out. The important takeaway is watch the upper, or two things. Obviously, we got to see if if this system finally develops, and what happens after it deals with the islands. And the other thing is the upper air. How does the upper air shape up in the eastern part of the United States? If you get a deep trough with a south southwest flow, then it's going to get caught in that eventually and shoot up the coast. If it's more west southwest because of the orientation of the trough, maybe it's not as phased, maybe it's not as deep, then you're going to wind up with maybe something that makes a more gradual turn and then turns out perhaps off the Carolinas and runs more northeast and passes well south and east of New England. Long way to go on figuring out those scenarios. And I think
And
the Hurricane Center would give you the same answer.
right, I'm sure they would. And the thing about this, Joe, we have here in the tri-state area, we have two possibilities here. Obviously, the storm tracking to our south and east. If we get a southeast track, what likely is going to happen here is that we'll see a bit of rain, and a little bit of a gustiness of the wind. Although I would think personally that folks who live along the immediate coastal plain will probably be subjected more to wind as opposed to a place like where I am in Putnam County, where we might see some breezy conditions, but nothing to write home about, and
Right.
a rain. Or if the storm takes a track, somehow manages to go to our west, let's say through western New Jersey or eastern Pennsylvania, and then on up, let's say, into interior eastern New York.
Well, that could be
That,
a big rain event.
yeah, well, I think that would be more volatile for us. I think that'd be more volatile.
I can see that point. I can agree with that.
Then we would see, even where I am, we would see some rather strong gusty winds. We might even see significant convection. We might even go under a tornado watch for that.
Right,
So
but all of this is in theory now.
all this is in theory. But I mean, if you had to pick the lesser of two evils, then yeah, bring it on, bring it up to the Carolina coast and swing it by to our south and east. Because if this thing takes more of an inland track, I would be a little bit more concerned because I think it would be more of a volatile issue in terms of wind, in terms of convection. It would be a nastier type of system for
Right.
us if it were to go to our west.
And assuming it develops, and because of the variability, if you're watching from Florida, particularly the east coast of Florida, but maybe even the west coast, pay attention. This is something you need to, and I'm sure you are. I'm sure this is being talked about by your local weather people there, and also for the coastal Carolinas. I would pay attention to this with the way the upper air is setting up. It does lend to something moving up the coast, as we said. And remember, we already have had a tropical storm back a couple of weeks ago, Faye, if you recall, that kind of popped up at the last second, sort of, and moved straight northward up the east coast and brought some very heavy rains to the mid-Atlantic states and through New Jersey. Didn't get a whole lot of rain out my way, got very little actually, but the point is that and I've used this example many times. When the pattern sets up for a long period of time, things don't tend to repeat exactly, but they do tend to rhyme. And the fact that we've already had a system along the East Coast kind of lends support to the idea that maybe this is the East Coast's year with regards to these tropical systems. We'll just have to see. So let's depart from this and take a look at what's going on elsewhere tonight around the U.S. And of course, it's summertime, and there are some areas that are dealing with severe weather in parts of the Central Plains and eastern Colorado. The heat is shifting to the west now in parts of Washington, Idaho, and also in California. And with the ridge going down to the west and the trough setting up in the east, that would make sense. We see that's where all the heat advisories are. We've got some flash flood watches in eastern Oklahoma, southern Missouri, and northwestern Arkansas. The Storm Prediction Center for today, which I haven't even looked at this all day, Joe. but you can see the finger of no thunderstorms poking from coastal New England across Long Island and New Jersey and going all the way into Ohio and West Virginia. Slight risk in the Central Plains, marginal risk Western New York, northwestern Pennsylvania. For tomorrow, because we do have a weather front coming through, we actually have a marginal risk of severe weather for southern New England, back to New York City, the lower Hudson Valley, New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, down into Delaware, Maryland, and eastern Maryland and northeastern Virginia. And that is for Thursday. And then looking ahead to Friday, we see a little bit of a break over us, but just go to southern New Jersey on southward. You've got general thunderstorms. And then, of course, you set up with that marginal risk from parts of eastern New Mexico across Texas from west to east into Arkansas and over into Tennessee. The
But that,
radar. Go
but
ahead.
that
I'm sorry.
the marginal risk, Joe, for thunderstorm activity tomorrow. I'm again, I've had this happen several times before, disagreeing with the Storm Prediction Center because of the better or the best short-term models that we have really show hardly anything, both in terms of precip and even convective activity until at the earliest, maybe nightfall tomorrow. If that happens, if we do get into a marginal case of possible strong to severe thunderstorm activity, personally, I don't think it would happen until tomorrow night sometime. I think
Right,
most of
and tomorrow night's issue is going to be as that front goes by. There's like a little wave I think that goes up and brings some rain up from Virginia. What happened? A few. When did this happen? Back not that many days ago, where it brought heavy rains. It was heavy rains in southern New Jersey and points southward. Everybody else kind of cleared out, or at least partially cleared out. I forgot what day it was. It's very recent. And the front kind of got hung up for a few hours, and you saw all these storms that came up from the south. I think you might see a repeat for performance of that tomorrow night into Friday morning, getting parts of New Jersey and Long Island. And we'll bring up the surface map in a second. But here's the radar tonight. And we do have some showers and storms in parts of the Carolinas, throughout the southeast, and down through Florida. Also in parts of just a minimal amount in southeast Texas. And we're seeing showers and storms more widespread spreading across Missouri into Illinois and parts of Arkansas. Also, where we're seeing severe weather tonight, the potential for severe weather tonight. We're seeing some big cells in western Kansas, western Nebraska, and eastern Colorado, and also a couple of stray cells down into northwest Texas and even into southern New Mexico. And the west is pretty quiet, which is what we would expect. So I'm just going to go back to the GFS very quickly. And we're going to take a look at, let's get, oh, come on. Here we go. It's being
because then we
even.
have a couple of showers or storms in the vicinity of Mr. Veltman tonight.
Oh, up near Albany on the radar.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, indeed. All right. So here comes, let me get a, let's get a good, we'll get the eastern part of the U.S. here. And I'll bring up the radar view, and now we'll roll it back a bit. So let's hang it back. You know what happens with with a lot of these websites when weather is busy, everybody's getting on at the same time. So it just makes it a little problematic. So we have to watch the circle of death spin round and round and round,
Yeah.
While the maps attempt to load. Okay, so here's tomorrow, Joe, on the GFS, and you've got this. There's this front that's going to move on through. Oh, good God, come on, Mr. Map, behave. So you've got this front that's coming through, and right back through here, you see these showers and storms that are going to be in the Ohio Valley tomorrow morning. Those are going to move northeastward, and you can see tomorrow night, Joe, when that front comes through tomorrow evening, there really isn't too much with it, as you pointed out. But then tomorrow night into Friday morning, you've got this area here in New Jersey, southern Pennsylvania, down to Delaware and Maryland. By early Friday morning, there's still some leftover rain here from maybe Poughkeepsie south, northern, most of New Jersey, just some patchy rain. And that is going to go out. Now, on the lower right, you see the beginnings of the tropical system. This frontal boundary is going to sit here across the Carolinas. That's another complicating factor, by the way, with respect to how strong this system gets, because there's going to be some shear that's going to possibly get in the way. Although the Hurricane Center said that that might be a bit overdone, the shear that's being indicated by some of the models. But you take a look here, you still have that frontal boundary going into the weekend. I'm thinking Saturday will probably get away with it being an okay day, even though there probably will be some showers and storms not too far. And then Sunday's kind of iffy. It all depends on what's going on along the East Coast. You've got this upper trough that's swinging in. And there's going to be some showers and storms running around. Somebody gets them, somebody doesn't get them, and then now we're at the mercy of the long range. And we'll be back tomorrow with with try to resolve this confusion.
I will note also that on the hand-drawn, um, uh, day 4, 5, 6, 7 day maps, that they take the tropical system, ring it right into the Carolinas, and even by next Tuesday or even next Wednesday, they still have it like sitting down over the Carolinas, nowhere near, or nothing even remotely resembling either what we've seen off of Levi Cohen's tropical tidbit page or what we've been seeing with the models in general, bringing it along the eastern seaboard. So I'm not sure why they put it so far inland and why they make it so slow on those 5 day or 7 day forecast maps. But I'm not the one who draws them.
Yeah, I don't know. All right,
We
so
had a
we're back full screen now. So
we had a question from Fled Weather.
yes,
Saying, according to the SPC and several National Weather Service offices, on Sunday the conditions are favorable for a fairly good severe weather event in the Northeast. Can you take a look and give you your thoughts? And I did take a look. And number one, if it is such a good possibility for severe weather, one has to wonder, first of all, why they didn't at least put anything on their chart. They still say predictability uncertain or predictability too low for Sunday, although they do allude to it in the discussion. And number two, on Sunday, we are going to be very close to a frontal line. I guess you could call it a warm front here in the tri-state area. Question is whether the front will move on through during the day Sunday, and a kind of a cold front coming in from the west, putting kind of a squeeze play on us.
right.
So if things
If
were
the warm front does move northward, if the upper air sets up where you get that frontal boundary starts to shift northward, it is because of the fact that it's basically setting the atmosphere up for the tropical system to come up the east coast. So that is
right,
going to be something we're going to have to look at in the next couple of days. Is how that all sets up.
right. So there's your answer.
Okay. See, what do we got here? We've got some super chat hits tonight, Joe, but I can't see them, so maybe you can take a look for us
We have
and
two of
see who did.
Alicia Williams.
Oh, Alicia, thank you very much for hitting super chat. She and I have been having a conversation on my Facebook page regarding some of the severe weather that we had in parts of the area recently. I still haven't been able to find whether it hit. I believe it was late last week where they had that severe weather around New York City and points nearby. That there might have been some microbursts. Still have not seen anything. I'll see if I can get a hold of Bill Goodman and ask him about that. But thank you for hitting super chat, most appreciated.
And the other super chat from Brendan Doherty.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it as well. And don't
Brandon,
forget, folks, if you're down in Delaware, Weather Junkies are us on Brandon's Patreon weather page.
And he
So
says
give
you
that a
guys
look.
are great.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
How much did you pay him to post that?
I did not pay any. I don't do that, Mr. Rayo. I do not do that.
I I just want to say I really appreciate the comments from um, all of you on the chat board when you say stuff like that, because to me, Joe and I have been known each other now for over 40 years, and so what we're doing tonight on the air is more or less what we've done either when we're with each other
or sitting across from each other at work.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
And so we're just letting all of you, and we're bringing all of you backstage, so to speak, on these conversations every night, because we're just a couple of guys talking weather and having fun, and I'm so delighted that all of you are so. I mean, my goodness, we still have over 100 people watching. Um, how many do you think we're
We
going to
could
have?
argue that that's probably more than we had watching when we were working. Did I just say that?
Yeah.
Hello?
Oh God.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Now, this is the honest to God truth. I mean, like, I'm not saying this to brag. I think 21 years on News 12, I couldn't go anywhere, any place with my wife shopping or a restaurant thing where somebody comes up to me and recognizes me or whatever like that. As soon as I started working for the other place, I mean, people coming up to me and they're saying, "Well, you retired. Well, we don't see anymore." And I said, "What is that? Do I have an audience still, or do I not have an audience?" And you're right. Probably I have more of an audience here than I did with the other place. That
I left News 12 on a full-time basis in 1996. I still occasionally will get somebody who think that they just saw me there yesterday.
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, I don't know what you've done for the last 24 years, but I kind of left a long time ago. All
Yeah,
right. Um, yeah, and oddly enough, I'm having more fun doing this than I've ever had. Um, I did have a lot of fun. I did have a ton of fun when I worked at WPIX. That was a dream job for me. I enjoyed it, but I said to you while I was doing this while we were both working together at the other place, the that I got far more out of doing this than doing the TV stuff. Because you
right.
know what? If you've got YouTube and you've got TV now, you got a YouTube option on your smart TV. You can pull this up on the big screen in your living room or your family room and watch us from there. So we have our own television. This is our own show. It's our own television.
Mhm. I mean,
Nobody
quite
can tell us what to do. Nobody can tell us what we can do. We can't do what we can say or we can't say. It's ours.
right.
Well, it's my channel.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, we've been doing this now long before the pandemic, and I find it kind of amusing now that I'm seeing so many famous or celebrity people on television who are now talking to somebody else in the same boxes that we've been doing for Lord knows how much longer. I mean, it's kind of funny. Not everybody has kind of come over to our side in in doing this kind of stuff.
Mikey B is asking me, did I do WHLI? I did. Got to
Yes.
work with Dean Anthony and Gil David and
Who was the one who died while sitting at his desk?
well, no, in
Spectre.
fact, what's that?
That was Jack Spectre, right?
Jack Spector. And actually, I used to call in and record my weathers. And I'm racking my memory. When I called that afternoon, I think what happened was, which was really unusual because Jack always answered the phone. Nobody answered the phone. So I kind of felt like something was wrong. And then I found out, of course, that Jack had passed away. A legend, Dean Anthony, of course, was,
No, it's so funny.
a legend in New York radio.
You worked with Jack Spector when he was at WHLI.
And you did it
I
with
worked with Jack
WMCA.
Spector when he was at WMCA.
Right, exactly. Mark G, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat. You're very generous. And Joe and I really appreciate it. Thank you
Thank
very
you, buddy.
much. That's a couple of beers and some appetizers for us, Joe. So
Well,
that's a good thing.
a beer for you and maybe a bottle of knee high for me or whatever. Uh, huh. I
Brandon's
said,
being very kind to me. He says he found me when we had the snowstorm Jonas. I don't remember the Weather Channel name, so I really don't make the connection. So you got to tell me what year it was. I'm thinking that was the 13 storm. But anyway, I appreciate the kind words. Thank you
I
so
literally
much.
threw a hissy fit behind the scenes when I was at News 12 because they were making much ado about Winter Storm Nemo. That was the one, Joe,
Yes,
that gave you the 30 some odd inches of
was it
snow.
Nemo that gave me the 30? I don't even remember
I think it
anymore.
was Nemo or whatever. But I went right to the to my news director, very lovely woman, Janine Rose, and I said, Janine, you've got to stop using that name or any names. I mean,
Oh,
this is
I
a
hated it. I just hated it. You
yeah.
know, actually, that actually came up. I believe somebody at the other place, a reporter, used it in their story, you referred to the Weather Channel's name, and I didn't have a chance to blow a gasket because somebody else did.
Right.
Okay, there was a brief pause there, so in case you missed that, what I said was I didn't have a chance to blow a gasket because somebody else in management did. Uh,
Right.
Giving basically giving a credit and attention to another network, which is a no-no. But that kind of stuff used to just drive me nuts. And ever
And
when I
Brandon,
have a conversation with somebody and they bring it up, when they bring up these storm names, these snowstorm names, there's always a part of me that just, I don't know about you, Joe, but there's always a part of me that just cringes.
right.
I mean the word cringe. It's like, ew. And you're gritting your teeth and biting your tongue because you really want to just like want to get out of the conversation, but you can't. Breyer's ice cream is the best, says Mikey B. Now there's a change of subject. All natural. There's a cow and frog icon on the box. I guess this is promising something natural. I have actually some Breyer's chocolate upstairs that I might go to after the show is done. Now,
Brandon Doherty says that for you to tell me, but I can see it on the chat board right here, that the funniest times were when we were working at that other job, and I would plow through the door. I, you'd already start the show, and I would come in like 2 or 3 minutes later, and I would
yeah,
just like open the door
the
and
door,
slam.
right, slam it. Yes. So I always to do my weather. My Jersey weather hit was at 7 o'clock. I'd be done at like 45 seconds into the hour, and I would just immediately start the show. And I'd have to wait for you to finish whatever you were doing, and then you would come in. By the way, I have the 8 o'clock advisory. It is still a potential tropical cyclone, so they haven't upgraded it yet. The position is at 16 north, 66.3 west. 140 miles south of Ponce, Puerto Rico, 280 miles southeast of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Top winds of 45 miles an hour, moving west northwest, or 285 at 18. So it's slowing down. Interestingly, it's slowing down. That could be an indication that maybe the low level center is trying to close off. I'm just guessing here. Minimum pressure 1,004, 2965. There's been no changes in any of the watches and warnings. So, do you have some Briller Jeopardy?
Yes, I do. And
But
by the
before
way,
you do Briller Jeopardy, Johnny Quest asks, tornadoes forming in the front or the rear of a storm. I guess he's referring to a tropical storm, and why? I would tend to think it would form usually, and I guess it depends though, because if you're I think most of the time, if I'm just trying to think off the top of my head,
because
most
the
of the time
northeast,
they're east of the center.
right,
You're going to
right,
see them east of the center, which is going to tend to be, you know, where your inflow is coming in from a water source. So up here, it would probably be a situation like with Faye, for example. Now they didn't. I don't think there were any funnel clouds, but I know there was a risk. It's going to be east of the track. Even though, by the way, when they get up to this latitude, they're not quite purely tropical anymore. So they do have a tendency to behave a little bit like the non-tropical systems, and they're always going to be in the part that's east and southeast of the center in what we would call the warm sector. So I
right.
think that's probably a good way to look at it. Although that's not to say in the Gulf of Mexico when they're coming in, moving from east to west, and they're going in to the Texas coast, you could wind up seeing tornadoes there, even on the backside. So, oh, you're saying that was supposed to be a thunderstorm? Well, either way, I mean, you could see thunderstorms on any side, but they're probably going to be a little bit more on the in the northeast quadrant. All right. So anyway, you've got yours and I've got mine. So uh, first of all, I have a poll question for you. Okay,
Question?
a poll question.
Okay.
Okay, so the poll question is, what do you think will happen first? New York City hitting 100, or New York City hitting 0 or going below 0? Which do you think happens first?
I think it's going to be the 100. I think we're a lot more likely to hit 100. It's getting so difficult now to get New York City down to zero, even below zero.
Okay.
Um, But I
I'm
think
gonna. I'm. You know what? I actually do agree with you to an extent. But I'm going to take the other side of that trade. I'm going to say that we are more likely to go 0 or below before we go to 100 again. Of course, I could get killed in a couple of weeks if we get into a heat wave pattern in the middle of August. So, but this is for Central Park, New York City. So that actually gives me about a 2 to 3 degree edge because LaGuardia could go to 102 and the park will only go to 97.
right.
But nonetheless, I'll take the other side of that trade, and I'll say 0 or below.
Okay.
And the other question is, I got to find it. What did I do with them? Hold on.
Thank you very
I
much,
got it.
Scott. Scott just hit super chats.
Thank you, Scott. He's
We'll
quite
be
generous.
delivering. We'll
Scott's
be
been doing
delivering.
a lot of COVID deliveries, so we should give Scott a big hand for that. And
Right.
Scott's mom is, still waiting for her knee surgery. Come on, you got to get going. Get to Home Depot, get it done, Miss Mrs. Briller. Come on, we got to get those knees done for you so that you can, roller skate again, which is a good
Thank you
thing.
for, thank you for the early birthday greeting, Scott.
Okay, so question one. Even though the Mets home opener was in July, it wasn't the hottest Mets home opener that occurred. In what year did we have the hottest Mets home opener?
I think, I actually think it was something like in the mid 90s. I remember there was a day when the Mets were playing opening day that Poughkeepsie hit 90, and I'm talking about a day in late March. Um, I think that was somewhere in the mid 90s. I'll take a wild stab and say 1998.
One,
1991?
91.
Right.
Got to 90. But the other year, and this was, no, because it was 76. But the other year was 1977. So we must
Really?
have had an odd 90-degree day in April of 77.
Well, I could tell you I've been to an opening day with my sister where when we got into Shea Stadium and sat down, there was snow under the seats. So that
Okay.
was that was a
Uh,
cold opening day.
so what was the least active tropical season?
Out of the 150 some odd or
Right.
175, the least
The
active.
least active.
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it was sometime either in the late 19th or early 20th century. I'll just take a stab and say 1894.
1904. You were in the general vicinity. 1914.
Uh-huh.
Wilson was president.
And how many do we have?
One. One
One.
known. One known system. There could have been others.
I
Uh,
could assure you, if we had a satellite up there, we'd probably
I'm sure
find
we
it.
had more.
Yeah.
What was the highest and lowest temperature ever recorded in Halifax, Nova Scotia?
I've been to Halifax. I'm going to say the highest was. Do I have to do it in Fahrenheit or Celsius?
You can do Fahrenheit.
I'll say 100 for the highest. No, I'll say 101 for the highest, and the lowest I'll say is minus 20.
99 was the high. He missed that by one, and minus 21 was the low. So he missed that by one.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. By the way, internet getting a little shaky here, so if we go off, I'm not coming back. So just so
Okay.
you know. All
All
right.
right.
So run through
Very
your
good.
questions.
It says he writes, turnabout fair play every month. I ask me, the highest and lowest temperature for the month in Central Park. August, it's Mr. Chiappi's turn. What is Central Park's highest and lowest temperature in the month of August?
We did this the other day. Was it 104 for the high and 51 for the low?
104 for the high in 1918. The lowest was 50 in 1976.
Something like that.
Did I ask you about then what was the highest and lowest temperature in Paris?
No, I don't remember you asking me that.
Okay.
I'll say for Paris, I'll say 108 for the highest, and I don't know, 3 for the lowest.
Highest was 105, and the lowest, believe it or not, even I can't believe that they got that slow. Negative 11.
Well, all right. So every once in a while, I guess those Arctic things come down. Those Arctic air masses get down pretty far south.
Yeah.
I've never been to Paris.
I have not been to Paris. I've been to Nice.
Do you have
And
any? Do you have any
and
relatives in Nice? Do you have a
no,
niece? A niece in Nice?
I don't have a niece in Nice.
Just
But I
checking.
will tell you that that on the beaches at Nice, the women wear the barest amount that you can imagine. I'll leave it at that.
Oh yeah, and one of the funniest things places I've been to, and I thought was really funny, was you go to the island of Saint Martin in the Caribbean, and it's half Dutch, and there's a Dutch side and a French side. Okay, and you can, if I remember correctly, because I always mix these two up, you can walk around the beaches nude on the French side, but you can't gamble. Okay, you have to
Okay.
have all your clothes on the Dutch side, but you can gamble. I mean, why not just do both on either side? But this is, I would have
Yeah, but
thought it would have been the other way around. I would have thought that the nudity. Well, before I get myself into trouble, I'm not gonna. I don't want to go down that
on
road.
the French side, where would you put your wallet or your purse?
I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know where you put your. I don't know where you hang your baggage while you're out on the
Uh,
beach.
Joe, it's time to go.
It is. Okay, folks. So
As you used to say back in our younger days, this is getting too overt.
it is. So, just to remind everybody, there is a podcast version of this that will be on in about an hour in case you want to replay this and just listen to the show, or perhaps you joined in late and you don't have time to sit through the whole video. And we're on Apple Podcasts, Mr. Rayo. Our podcasts are on Apple
Finally, on
Podcasts
Apple.
now. Yes, they are. I saw them there today. So if you do go on Apple Podcasts and get our podcast, do leave us a nice review, because that would be a good thing, and we would appreciate it greatly. And of course, we'll be back here tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on the Joe and Joe Weather Show,
Oh.
right? Which is brought to you by Dicker and Dicker of Beverly Hills.